The bridal cord was braided with moon thread and wolf hair, white and silver against my throat, and it felt like a promise until my mate ripped it off in front of everyone. It snapped like a tendon. For one stunned heartbeat, the great hall was silent. No cups clinking, no fire cracking, no breath except mine. And then, Darian Blackmore held the broken cord high as if it were a snake he'd killed. "I reject Luna Shadowfang," he said, voice carrying from the high rafters to the lowest benches. "Before Packlaw, before Moon Witness, she is moon-cursed." The word hit harder than a slap. Cursed. Not barren, not unmated, not unworthy. Cursed. A stain no pack would touch. I didn't understand. We had been scent-matched by 3 elders. He had courted me for a season, bowed over my hand in public, laid his palm over mine under moonlight and vowed he would never shame me. The bridal paint was still damp on my wrists. Someone laughed from the second tier. Then another voice, female, sharp with delight. "I told you her scent turned strange at dusk." A parchment was slapped onto the ritual stone. Elder Maeve's old fingers trembled as she lifted it and read with widening eyes. "Instability markers, lunar volatility, hazard classification confirmed?" I lunged toward it. "That's a lie. Let me see it." Darian shoved me back with 2 fingers to my shoulder like I was a stray pup. "Don't touch the records?" "My lady," I begged Elder Maeve, "you know me, since I was a child." She didn't meet my eyes. "The notation bears 3 seals. 3 seals, too clean, too prepared, too precise to be panic or mistake." Lachlan stood near the hearth, my older cousin, the one who taught me knife work. The one I used to call brother when we were little enough to share blankets during winter storms. He watched without moving, one hand tucked in his belt, expression grave and pitying like he'd rehearsed it. "You should go quietly, Luna," he said. "Don't make this uglier." "Uglier?" I laughed, then heard the cracked edge in it. "I am your blood." He gave a tiny shake of his head. "Blood doesn't outrank safety." The hall broke into murmurs. "Moon-cursed. Can't keep her in high quarters. She'll rot the pups." Darian stepped up onto the dais so everyone could see him sever me cleanly. "By mate law and pack custom, I dissolve this union before completion. Remove her from noble residence and confine her to Omega Quarter housing until a tribunal can assess contamination." Contamination. That was when I realized this had never been an argument I could win. The verdict had been written before I walked down the aisle. 2 wardens took my elbows. Not hard enough to bruise in obvious places. Hard enough to remind me they could. I didn't cry in the hall. I wouldn't give them that. I held my spine straight while they marched me through the back corridors, past servants who looked away too fast, past the moon shrine where I'd lit marriage candles that morning. My veil snagged on a nail and tore down the middle. Neither warden slowed. They put me in the lower annex, 3 levels below the kitchens where the air tasted of damp stone and old smoke. Not the royal capital's Omega quarters yet. These were holding pens dressed up as barracks, where unwanted wolves waited to be reassigned, bred out, or forgotten. My room had a pallet, a cracked basin, and a door that locked from the outside. By dawn, the whispers had outrun me. By noon, the first insults came with the ration bucket. "Careful," said the attendant, not looking directly at me. "Don't breathe too close." That night, my skin burned where the cord had been. I pressed my face into the blanket to muffle sound and finally let myself shake. By the second day, everyone had a theory. I had hidden madness. I had bedded a rogue. I had been marked by dark moon. No one asked me what was true, because truth didn't matter once fear had paperwork. On the 3rd day, Lachlan came. He stood outside the bars while 2 guards hovered behind him, too polite to call it an interrogation. He wore formal gray, mourning colors, as if I'd died, and he was honoring the memory. I'm trying to contain this, he said. Contain what? Your forgery? He clicked his tongue. Still so dramatic. You think I can't smell ink fresh on that report? You think I don't know Elder Maeve's seal angle is wrong? His eyes went cool, a look I had never seen directed at me. You should stop speaking like you still have leverage. What do you want, Lachlan? Order. Continuity. Shadowfang cannot be represented by someone under contamination inquiry. Emergency guardianship has been filed until your status resolves. The word guardianship slammed into my chest. I was 22. Of rank. Of sound mind. He had no legal claim unless I'm declared unfit, I whispered. He smiled without warmth. You said it, not me. When he turned to leave, I grabbed the bars so hard my knuckles popped. You loved me once. Lachlan paused, profile cut in torchlight. Once. He walked away. The breaking point came that same night, wearing the voice of a child. I woke to muffled crying in the corridor. Small, hiccuping, terrified. I pressed my eye to the slit in the door and saw little Neri from laundry quarters, no more than 8, wrists tied with linen strips while a handler dragged her toward the transport stairs. She bit a noble's son, one guard muttered. She defended herself, said another. Doesn't matter. Lower wards are full. Shipment leaves before dawn. Shipment. Neri twisted and saw me through the slit. Luna, please. I slammed my shoulder against the door. Pain streaked down my arm. Again. Again. Fails. Their footsteps faded. Neri's fails. Their footsteps faded. Neri's cries with them. I stood there breathing like I'd run miles, forehead against cold wood, and something in me tore loose. Not pride, not innocence, something deeper and more practical. If I stayed, I would become a signed form, an asset, a body transferred between hands with proper seals. At second bell, I heard voices at the junction tunnel, Lachlan's among them. Eclipse moot in 12 days, he said softly. Keep her intact until then. No visible damage. If she bolts, sedate. Another voice. And the inheritance records? Already amended. By the time she knows, she won't matter. I backed away from the door with my heart pounding against my ribs hard enough to bruise. Eclipse moot, intact, sedate. I waited until guard rotation, the sloppy window before dawn when night watch wants bed and day watch wants food. I had 1 contraband hairpin, 2 torn veil strips, and the stubborn fact that I'd once won lock races against Lachlan for coppers and bragging rights. Kneel, insert, lift, listen, breathe. The first tumbler clicked. The second stuck. My hands were shaking too hard. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron, forced my fingers still, and turned again. Click. The lock gave with a sigh like a secret. I slipped into the corridor barefoot, clutching my shoes so the soles wouldn't slap stone. The lower annex smelled of mildew, boiled cabbage, and old fear. Somewhere above, bells marked third watch. I moved fast, shadow to shadow, past storage alcoves and the laundry chute, down the tunnel that led to the refuse yard. A warden rounded the corner carrying ledgers. I flattened behind a stack of coal sacks and held my breath until my lungs burned. Coal dust coated my tongue. He passed, cursing paperwork, and I ran. The refuse grate was chained. I used the hairpin until it bent, then used the broken tip as a wedge and kicked the rusted hinge with both heels. Once, twice. On the third hit, the bolt sheared and the grate lurched open, dumping me into thorn scrub beyond the outer wall. Rain hit like thrown pebbles. Cold spring rain, hard enough to sting. I shoved my feet into my shoes and ran downhill through black pines, skirts snagging on branches, lungs ripping raw in the wet air. Behind me, a horn sounded once, then again, higher and urgent. Not for me, I told myself. Not for me. Then the hounds answered. I cut east instead of south, toward the Ironhold border, toward the capital Keep everyone called the Spine because it rose from the mountain like bone. If I could reach Crown jurisdiction, Shadowfang wardens couldn't drag me back without tribunal. That was law, at least on paper. Dawn bled gray into the forest. Mud sucked at my shoes. My bridle beads worked loose and scattered along the trail like tiny moons. I left them. Let the woods have every symbol of that night. By midday, I was fever-chilled and shivering despite the run. My throat felt scraped hollow. I crossed a river on a fallen cedar, slipped, slammed my knee, and nearly went under in meltwater so cold it knifed up my spine. I clawed onto the far bank and lay there gasping, cheek pressed to moss, while crows argued overhead. Move, Luna. I moved. When the forest finally thinned, the capital appeared through rain mist, Ironhold Keep, black stone and silver banners, watchtowers bristling with spears. Wolves in war gray paced the gate ridge, no welcoming fires, no music, no safety promised. Just power. I staggered to the lower gate and raised both empty hands. 2 sentries dropped from the ramp in one smooth predatory motion. Their armor smelled of oiled leather and steel. One was broad-shouldered with a scar through his brow. The other carried a long spear leveled exactly at my sternum. State pack and purpose, Scarbrow said. Luna Shadowfang, I managed. Asylum request under Crown law. I invoke Moon Refuge. At my name, both wolves went still. The spear tip lifted a fraction. Shadowfang? The rejected bride? Heat crawled over my skin, shame, fury, old humiliation waking like a wound. Yes. Scarbrow inhaled, scenting me, and his expression sharpened. You're the one from the warning dispatch. Unstable markers. Possible hazard. Forged. My voice cracked. Please. They exchanged a look. Procedure warred with disgust, with caution, with whatever rumor had reached them first. Search her, Scarbrow ordered at last. No silver, no toxin. Then take her down to lower residential intake. Omega Wing. Not noble guest quarters, not sanctuary halls. The basement wards beneath the keep. Still, inside the gate. I nearly wept from relief and swallowed it down instead. By nightfall, I had a narrow room in Ironhold's Omega quarters, cleaner than the annex I fled, but still underground. Still a place people forgot to mention when they praised the Crown's grandeur. A cot, a blanket, one tiny window cut high in the stone where I could see a sliver of moon. I slept like the dead for a few hours, then woke drenched in sweat, ribs aching as if something hot had been written under my skin. The first mark appeared before dawn. Silver gold lines, faint as veins at first, just beneath my left ribs. Curving script I didn't recognize, luminous for 3 breaths before fading. I touched the spot and hissed. It burned. By the 3rd night, the whispers started. The Alpha King came down again. At midnight? Didn't enter, just stood there. Outside whose door? I didn't ask. I already knew from the way people looked at me, then away. On the 5th night, I stayed awake, back against the wall, blanket clutched in both fists. Footsteps came at the turn of the hour, measured, heavy, unhurried. Not a guard's shuffle, a commander's stride. They stopped outside my door. Silence swelled, charged and alive. Through old wood and iron, a scent threaded in. Pine smoke, rain, steel, and something wild enough to make my pulse trip. I could see only his shadow under the threshold line. Tall, broad, motionless. My ribs flared with sudden heat. Silver gold runes bloomed beneath my skin like embers catching air. Outside, the Alpha King did not knock. Inside, I pressed my palm over the burning marks and tried not to shake while fate stood breathing on the other side of the door. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Him on one side of the door, me on the other, both of us listening to each other breathe. Then the heat under my ribs went white hot. It wasn't pain anymore. It was invasion. My vision sparked at the edges, and I bit back a cry as the silver gold lines blazed hard enough to light my skin from beneath. The cracked basin beside my cot rattled when I hit it with my hip. Water sloshed over stone. The shadow under the door moved. A key turned. The door opened inward, and he filled the frame like a storm front. Tall, broad through the shoulders, black hair damp from night rain, war shirt unlaced at the throat, a blade at one hip, and authority in every line of him. A scar cut from his jaw toward his ear, pale against tan skin. His gaze found me in one sweep, sharp and feral. Cyrus Ironhold, not rumor, not shadow, the Alpha King himself, in my room. I shoved to my feet from instinct, pride, fear, something, but the floor tilted. Heat knifed through my ribs and down my spine. My knee buckled. He moved before I hit. One hand caught my forearm, the other my waist, and the instant his skin touched mine, the world split open. A shockwave ripped through me, raw lightning and blood. My pulse slammed once, hard, then locked to another rhythm entirely, deeper and steadier, beating from his chest into mine. My wolf surged awake with a cry I felt in my bones, not my ears. Heat coiled low in my belly, wild and urgent, while at the same time a cool, anchoring pull settled at the base of my throat like a hook set true. My breath stuttered. So did his. Cyrus sucked in air through his teeth, a sharp, involuntary sound. His fingers tightened once on my waist, then froze as if he was afraid to touch any more than he already had. His eyes flashed gold, full wolf glow, then strangled back to human. "No," he said, but it came out like a prayer gone wrong. I stared up at him, dizzy with scent and certainty. Pine smoke, steel, rain, and under it now, threaded through my own skin, something that answered me like an echo. Mate. The word detonated through every shard of humiliation I'd carried since the hall. Rejected bride, moon cursed, cast down. And yet my body knew this wolf with absolute merciless recognition. I jerked, trying to pull away and hold on at the same time. "What did you do to me?" His jaw flexed. "Nothing." "Liar." My voice shook. "This is a bond sign. I know what this is." "So do I." He looked genuinely sick for one heartbeat. War Alpha, King, the wolf every border pack feared, standing in front of me like a man who had just watched a battlefield map catch fire. "You're burning. Because you're in my room. Because the sigil is awake." The words slipped out before he could stop them. I went still. "What sigil?" He didn't answer. His gaze dropped to where the runes glowed beneath my ribs through thin linen, then snapped away, like he'd looked too long at the sun. A pounding of boots sounded in the hall. 2 guards skidded to the open doorway, breathless, then stopped dead at the sight of us half entwined. "My king," one started. "Out," Cyrus said without looking at them. They vanished. He eased me down to sit on the cot. Careful, controlled. Every movement screamed restraint. I could feel his wolf pressing against his skin, furious and alert, called by mine and denied. Mine paced just as hard, whining at my own spine in confusion and hunger and fear. I wrapped my arms around myself. "You've been coming here every night." His silence confirmed it. "To inspect me?" I asked. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "To make sure you were alive when the runes flared." The room seemed to tilt again, but this time from information rather than fever. "You knew this would happen." "I knew it could." He crouched in front of me so our eyes were level, close enough that if I leaned forward even an inch, I'd brush his mouth with mine. He did not close that inch. "Luna, listen to me. Whatever you were told about being cursed is a weapon, not a diagnosis." My laugh was thin and frayed. "That's supposed to comfort me?" "No." His gaze locked on mine, unblinking. This is, I will not let anyone use you. The promise hit too close to old vows spoken by a different male in a brighter hall. I flinched. Cyrus saw it. He let out a breath and deliberately shifted back, giving me space. You don't have to trust me tonight. Convenient, I whispered, because wanting to trust him felt like stepping onto ice. His mouth went hard. Trust has nothing to do with convenience. Another wave rolled through me, hotter than the last. I folded forward with a gasp, fingers digging into my own arms. He reached and stopped himself midair. May I? He asked. The question hit me harder than his touch had. No one had asked me anything since my wedding night except for signatures and compliance. I nodded, once. His palm settled against my upper back, broad and warm, steady pressure, grounding rather than claiming. The bond jumped again, less violent this time, more like two currents finding one channel. My breathing slowed by force. When the flare finally ebbed, he stood. His control had gone brittle around the edges. I could smell the strain on him now. Hot iron and restraint. At dawn, he said, voice rough, you'll be moved to a better room, guarded by my personal unit. Why? Because someone forged your records and chased you to my gate. His expression turned lethal and cold. And because if word spreads that I found my true mate in the Omega quarters, every ambitious wolf in this mountain will come sniffing for leverage. The cool pull at my throat deepened at the word mate, possessive and terrifying and right. He turned to go, then paused at the threshold without facing me. There's an old prophecy my council thinks is dead. It begins with runes like yours. His hand tightened on the doorframe. The mate who carries the crown howl will either crown me, his voice dropped, or kill me. He left before I could ask which outcome he feared more. By the next evening, my body answered for him. The first post-rejection heat hit like a fever-breaking wrong. Too early, too violent, all instinct and ache and no control. It rolled through me in brutal waves, scraping my nerves raw. My skin felt too tight, my senses too loud. Every scent in the ward sharpened into knives. My own wolf clawed at me from inside, frantic for relief. I made it to the floor before my legs gave out. Someone knocked once and entered without waiting for a full reply. Cyrus, carrying a clay jug beaded with condensation and a folded dark cloak over one arm. He took one look at me curled by the cot and stopped 3 strides away. I can call the healer, he said. No. The word came out as a whine. Then I stay here. He knelt, but at a distance, setting the jug and a cup between us like a truce line. You set the boundary. Tell me what you need. Need was a dangerous word. I pressed my forehead to my knees and breathed through clenched teeth while another wave tore through my spine. Cold, I managed. He poured water, slid the cup toward me without touching my hands. Sip. Slow. I did. Most of it spilled down my chin anyway. He pretended not to notice. Look at me, he said quietly when my breathing went ragged. Not the wall. Me. I did. His eyes were human brown tonight. No glow but full focus. A commander talking a soldier through blood loss. In for 4? He said. Hold for 4. Out for 6. I can't. You can. Again. I hated him for being right. I did it anyway. 1 count at a time, while heat climbed and broke and climbed again. He stayed where he was, close enough to anchor, far enough not to trap. Each time I started to fold in on myself, his voice found me and walked me back. Hours blurred. At some point I crawled to the wall because the stone was cooler. He shifted with me, still keeping that careful distance. Why? I asked hoarsely when I could form words. You could take advantage right now and no one down here would stop you. His expression went flat with old rage. Without warning, he yanked open his shirt, exposing the center of his chest, A jagged scar ran diagonally from left collarbone to lower rib, ugly and puckered, bite marks torn and healed badly around the edges. 3 winters ago, he said, voice like gravel, a council faction tried to force a political mating. They held me down and called it duty. I broke a man's jaw, put another through a table, and took this getting out. He let the shirt fall back into place. I would rather bleed to death than become what they were. The room went very quiet except for my breathing. He looked at me, unvarnished. No king mask left. I know what violation smells like, Luna. I won't add mine to yours. Something in my chest cracked. Not broken, opened. Another wave hit, less sharp this time. I shuddered through it, and when it passed, he lifted the cloak a little. Permission? He asked. I nodded. He draped it around my shoulders from behind so the fabric settled without his arms caging me. Warm wool, his scent all through it. Comfort without demand. My wolf, frantic for hours, finally went still enough to lie down. Thank you, I whispered into the cloth, shocked by the sincerity in my own voice. Cyrus leaned back against the opposite wall and stayed awake with me until dawn turned the high slit window from black to gray. 2 days later, I stood in the public ration line with his cloak clasped at my throat and tried not to notice how many wolves noticed me first. The line wound through the lower courtyard where quarter residents collected grain, lamp oil, and salt under watch. Word had spread too far, too fast. The cast-out Shadowfang Omega, the king's midnight visits, the runes nobody officially acknowledged. Curiosity breathed down my neck from every direction. I kept my eyes on the distribution table and my hands steady. Then the line stalled. 3 highborn alphas in hunting green stepped out from the side colonnade and blocked the path ahead of me. I recognized one by sight. Rhett Vale, second son of a border lord, pretty face and rotten mouth. He smiled like we were at a feast instead of a ration queue. Well, if it isn't discarded stock. Laughter rippled from his companions. I tried to step around. He shifted with me, close enough to crowd my space, intentionally brushing my shoulder. Careful, he said loudly to the line. I hear she goes unstable at dusk. Might foam on your boots. The old panic surged. Hall lights, torn cord, voices calling me cursed. My scent spiked, sharp and bitter. I heard it in the way nearby wolves inhaled. Rhett's smile widened. There. You smell that? Collapse behavior. We should petition removal before she contaminates the ward. Move, I said. He leaned closer. Or what? A new scent cut through the courtyard like a drawn blade. Pine smoke, steel, storm. Or you answer to me, said Cyrus Ironhold. The crowd split before him without being told. He came in full war leathers, gloves off, forearms bare, the Ironhold command mark dark against his throat. 2 of his guard flanked the archway but didn't interfere. Witnesses, not rescue. Rhett straightened, then forced a laugh. My king, we were only maintaining order. Cyrus stopped between us, not touching me, making himself a wall. Order does not include baiting a quarter resident into scent collapse. She is a risk. Cyrus turned his head just enough that everyone could hear him clearly. Any insult to Luna Shadowfang is an insult to Ironhold command. A rustle moved through the line. Shock, calculation, fear. Rhett's pride outran his survival instinct. He lunged. He never landed the hit. Cyrus caught his wrist, pivoted, and used Rhett's momentum to slam him to the stone in one brutal, efficient motion. The second alpha reached for a knife. One of Cyrus's guards stepped in and kicked it away. The third backed up so fast he nearly tripped over a grain crate. Rhett snarled and tried to shift. Cyrus's forearm pinned his throat, pressure precise. Don't, he said softly, which was worse than shouting. He looked up at me over the struggling alpha's shoulder. Luna. Just my name. An opening. Pack law clicked into place in my mind. The old clauses nobles loved to quote when it favored them. Public provocation in ration lines. Challenge rights. Restitution by rank acknowledgement. I stepped forward until Rhett could see my face. "Kneel," I said. His eyes went wide with disbelief. "To an Omega?" "To the wolf you publicly defamed under false hazard claim," I said, voice carrying farther than I expected. "And apologize, under pack law." He spat toward my boots. Cyrus increased pressure by a fraction. Rhett choked. "Choose carefully," Cyrus murmured. For a heartbeat I thought he'd refuse and force Cyrus to break him. Then his shoulders shook once with rage and he went still. Cyrus released him and stepped back, but stayed close enough to end it if needed. Rhett pushed up to his knees, face red, chest heaving. "I apologize," he ground out. "Lady Luna." "Louder," I said. His jaw ticked. "I apologize, Lady Luna Shadowfang." The courtyard held its breath. Then Elder Grainkeeper Toma, who had watched silently from the scales, struck his tally staff once against stone in formal witness. "Recorded," he said. Rhett staggered to his feet and backed away, dragging his friends with him. No one laughed now. Cyrus turned to me, expression unreadable. "Are you harmed?" "No." My pulse was pounding, but not from fear anymore. "I'm not." He gave one short nod, as if I had passed an inspection he never said aloud. Then, to the entire line. "Distribution resumes. Anyone with objections can file them to my office in writing, signed with their true name." No one moved for 3 heartbeats. Then the line began again. When I reached the table, Toma handed me my ration sack with both hands and a tiny bow I had not received since exile. Behind me, wolves shifted to make room instead of closing ranks. Small, practical courtesies. Bigger than they looked. Cyrus waited by the courtyard arch while I adjusted the sack against my hip. I hesitated, then walked to him under 100 watching eyes. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Yes, I did." "For politics?" "For law," he said. Then, after a beat, quieter. "And for you." The bond at my throat warmed, no longer a hook, more like a pulse. I studied his face, the scar, the hard mouth, the eyes that looked at me like I was neither fragile nor disposable, different from every male who had claimed to protect me before. My guard didn't fall all at once. It lowered a notch. "Walk me back?" I asked. Cyrus held out his arm, not touching until I chose it. This time, I chose it. This time, I chose it. His forearm was solid under my hand, warm even through leather, and the contact sent a low hum through the bond. Not the violent snap of first recognition, just a steady awareness that he was there, matching my pace as we crossed the courtyard. No one stepped into our path. By the time we reached the arch that led down toward the Omega wards, a runner in Ironhold Gray was waiting, breath clouding in the cold. "My king," he said, fist to chest. "Council courier, Shadowfang seal, urgent." Cyrus's mouth flattened. "In my war room. Now." He looked to me. "Come." The war room sat one level above the barracks. All maps, iron sconces, and a long table scarred by knife points and old strategy marks. I'd never been invited into such a space before exile. Omegas were discussed at those tables, not seated at them. Cyrus pulled out a chair for me anyway, then broke the Shadowfang seal. I recognized Lachlan's hand in the first line before Cyrus finished scanning it. "To His Majesty, Cyrus Ironhold, as acting guardian of Luna Shadowfang under emergency contamination law." My stomach dropped. "He filed it in your court." "He filed it everywhere," Cyrus said, and slid 2 more parchments across the table. One was a copy of my supposed instability report, now with 4 additional seals and annotations in 3 different inks to make it look old and validated. The second was worse, an inheritance addendum naming Lachlan Wildfire temporary steward of all Shadowfang assets, votes, and military command, pending the permanent incapacity of Luna Shadowfang. Permanent incapacity. My fingers tightened on the parchment until it wrinkled. He's trying to make it legal before anyone can challenge. Cyrus nodded once. He already moved coin through 3 border houses to buy witness statements. We traced the transfers this morning. The runner swallowed. There's more, my king. He set down a narrow ledger wrapped in oilskin. The front was stamped with a symbol I didn't know, a crescent bisected by a fang. Cyrus opened it, and for the first time since I'd met him, I watched actual fear move through his face. "What is it?" I asked. He turned the ledger toward me. Rows of names, dates, bloodline notes, side comments in shorthand. One line had my name, Luna Shadowfang, latent carrier confirmed by Moonstone reaction, age 14. Extraction possible at Eclipse Apex with kin binder and bonded alpha present. I stared until the words blurred. Extraction? Blood-binding right. Cyrus's voice went cold enough to frost. Forbidden for 2 centuries. My pulse thudded in my throat. Carrier of what? He held my gaze this time, no dodging. The Crown Howl sigil. I'd heard the phrase in old nursery tales, usually right before someone told children to stop asking political questions. Ancient authority. Pre-king law. Myth used to terrify unruly heirs. I laughed once. Broken. That's not real. The runes under your ribs are real. He tapped the ledger. And Lachlan's been building a ritual framework around your body since before your wedding. The room went too small. Memory slammed into place in ugly pieces. Lachlan insisting I skip a hunting trip at 14 because of faintness. An elder from nowhere asking for blood in the name of routine lineage records. Darian's courtship beginning right after. The rejection timed to public moon witness, making me socially dead in one night. Not random, not cruelty for sport. Positioning. He set Darian on me. I whispered. Cyrus didn't soften it. Most likely. The runner cleared his throat, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. There's a postscript, my king. Lord Wildfire requests Lady Luna be returned for purification at the Eclipse Moot. He offers witnesses to prove her instability if refused. I grabbed the table edge before I could do something stupid like tear Lachlan's eyes out with my hands. He wants me on a ritual floor while every major alpha watches, I said. If I refuse, I look guilty. If I go, he cuts me open. He doesn't cut you at all if I can help it, Cyrus said. I looked at him sharply. And if he drags Crown Law into it? If he claims you're holding me because of the mate bond? Cyrus's jaw worked. Then I burn his law to ash and build a better one. It should have comforted me. It didn't. Kings who burned law often burned people with it. He read that on my face. I won't force your hand, Luna. But I need you to understand your cousin isn't just stealing land right. He's trying to seize legitimacy itself. If he extracts even a fragment of Crown Howl and binds it to his line, half the realm will call him chosen. Even if he butchered me to get it. Especially then, Cyrus said, disgust sharp in his voice. He'll call it sacrifice. The runner set one more folded note on the table. Intercepted from lower wards. Cyrus opened it. 3 lines, no signature. Ironhold Guard takes Omega children after dark. Ask where they go. Ask why the king visits below stairs. My skin went cold. He's starting the riot, Cyrus said. And just like that, the room stopped being about my humiliation and became a battlefield map with my name at the center. By evening, the note had multiplied. Same words, different hands, posted near wash stations, ration bins, stairwells. Someone was paying boys with quick feet and no questions to carry panic through the keep. I helped tear down the first 6 myself. At the 7th, a woman in dye-stained sleeves snatched the scrap from my hand and hissed, "My nephew never came back from night sweep. Don't tell me not to fear." "I'm not," I said. I'm telling you to verify before you burn the wrong wolf. She pointed toward the upper levels. Easy for you now, walking with war leather at your back. The words stung because they were true enough to hurt. Protection had found me. It hadn't found everyone. Cyrus moved in the corridors like a drawn line. Orders short, patrols doubled, guard rotations shuffled so no one team could be isolated and blamed. He posted his own unit at lower stairwells and opened incident ledgers to public viewing, daring anyone to challenge records in daylight. By midnight, 3 pups had been reported missing from the lower wards, not taken in front of witnesses, not dragged screaming, just gone from cots and corners where children sleep when nobody important counts heads. Fear changed shape. It stopped being rumor and became math. In the command alcove beside the quarter gate, I stood over a map while Cyrus and Captain Holt marked disappearances with black pins. Holt, Scarbrow from the gate, now named and suddenly human to me, looked 10 years older than he had at sunrise. All from Omega families, he said, ages 6 to 10, no forced entry. Internal access, Cyrus said. Holt nodded grimly. Or someone the kids recognized. My throat tightened around Neri's name. I hadn't seen her since that night in Shadowfang's holding annex. I told myself she was too stubborn to vanish quietly. I told myself lots of things. Cyrus sensed the spike in my scent and touched 2 fingers to the table near my hand, not touching me, just close. Grounding. The bond warmed in response, inconvenient and calming at once. Eat, he said softly, sliding a heel of bread toward me. I'm not hungry. That wasn't a suggestion. I took the bread and hated that relief tasted like obedience. Across the keep, pressure kept mounting. The High Council demanded I submit to an independent Senate review for public confidence. 2 lords petitioned to relocate all unbonded Omegas outside the capital, temporarily for safety. A third suggested I be housed under ceremonial guard in the upper keep, pretty words for containment. And beneath all of it, attraction threaded itself through my fear like a stubborn root through stone. Every time Cyrus entered a room, my senses snapped to him first. Every time he looked at me, that cool pull at my throat tightened and settled. Sometimes our hands brushed over a map edge or cup handle and my heartbeat would skip into his rhythm so hard it made me dizzy. Want came with panic braided through it. I didn't know how to separate either from the bond. Late on the second night of missing child reports, I found him at the sink in the armory passage, scrubbing blood off his knuckles. Not his blood. He glanced up in the polished steel reflection. Couldn't sleep? I leaned against the wall, hugging my arms against the chill. You? He looked back down at the water running pink, then clear. Didn't try. A beat of silence. Did you hit someone for me again? I asked, trying for dry and landing on tired. His mouth tilted without humor. For 2 guards who took coin to plant witness statements. He shook water from his hands. For the record, they're alive. I never asked you to bleed for me. No, he said. You asked me to walk you back. The words landed low and warm and dangerous. I looked away first. The moon shrine in Ironhold was smaller than Shadowfang's, built into a cliff pocket open to the night. Someone had left votive dishes along the ledge, salt, dried lavender, 3 child-carved wooden wolves with chipped ears. I came there because the wards were too loud and my thoughts louder. I didn't hear Cyrus approach until he set a folded blanket over my shoulders from behind. You keep finding me, I said. You keep picking places with one entrance. He sat on the opposite side of the stone basin, close enough that our knees could touch if either of us moved. Neither did. Strategically unwise. Maybe I wanted to be found. His eyes lifted to mine, then held. For a while we listened to wind move through pine above the cliff. The bond between us felt different here, less like a live wire, more like a thread pulled taut but not painful. I traced one of the chipped wooden wolves with my thumb. When you said prophecy that night, I said quietly, you looked afraid. He laughed once under his breath. I was. Of me? Of what happens to people around power they think should belong to them. His jaw flexed. And yes, a little of you. That's reassuring. Honesty usually isn't. I folded my legs under me, blanket slipping. Tell me the whole prophecy. Cyrus was silent long enough that I thought he'd refuse. Then he spoke, voice low. When Moonline sleeps in cast-out blood, Crown Howl wakes beneath iron. The king who takes that mate by force dies by her voice. The king who kneels may rise crowned, or fall if she turns away. I absorbed that in pieces. By force dies by her voice. His gaze didn't waver. I told you I wouldn't touch without permission. And if I turn away? Then I lose whatever this is. He gestured between us, frustrated and careful at once. And maybe my throne with it, but you stay yours? No king had ever offered me an outcome where I remained mine. The realization hurt in a new place. I swallowed. I don't know how to do this. Trust, bond, any of it. The last male who swore in moonlight used me as theater. I know. His voice roughened. I saw the record of your rejection. I wanted to tear the hall apart. Why didn't you? Because kings who tear halls apart start wars. And because at the time I didn't know you were... He exhaled. I didn't know you. Wynn lifted a strand of his hair across the scar on his cheek. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it back. My fingertips brushed skin. The bond flashed hot and bright. Cyrus inhaled sharply but didn't move toward me. Permission? He asked, barely audible. My pulse hammered. For once, it wasn't fear alone. I nodded. He leaned in slow enough that I could stop him at any second and pressed his forehead to mine. No kiss, no claim. Just contact. Warm and steady and devastatingly gentle. I closed my eyes. For 3 breaths. 4. 10. There was no counsel. No rumor. No missing child map. Just his hand open on his own knee where I could see it. And my body learning that closeness did not have to mean surrender. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright gold at the edges. Luna, he said, voice frayed. If this gets worse, I may have to lock down the lower wards. I stiffened. Like a cage. Like a shield. He didn't sugarcoat it. Lachlan wants chaos. I can't protect anyone if parents and guards are tearing each other apart. Then don't hide me upstairs while they bleed. His answer was immediate. I won't. I believed him enough to be terrified by how much that mattered. A bell rang from the lower keep, then another, faster. Alarm. Cyrus was on his feet before the second peal ended. Stay. I was already standing. No. He cursed once, then grabbed my hand and ran. The lower courtyard looked like a kicked anthill by the time we hit the steps. Torches flared. Wolves shouted over each other. Someone had overturned a grain cart, wheat scattered across wet stone like pale bones. 2 mothers clutched each other near the pump, both screaming the same name. A guard lay bleeding by the arch, skull split, while Holt barked orders and got almost none obeyed. Back! Back to your units! Holt roared. A voice from the crowd answered, Murderers! Where are our children? Another, Ironhold took them. Then I saw the proof held overhead like a banner. A child's shawl knotted around an Ironhold guard insignia, soaked in blood. Riot needed symbols. Lachlan had just handed them one. Cyrus stepped onto the broken cart, wolf voice cracking across stone. Silence. For one shocked second, the courtyard obeyed. Then a man shoved forward, eyes wild. My son was taken from his cot. Your men were on the stair. Cyrus pointed at Holt. Seal the gates. No one leaves the keep. That was the correct command tactically and the worst one politically. A woman went down under trampling feet and guards raised shields. A woman went down under trampling feet and I dove without thinking, dragging her by the collar as claws slashed the air where her head had been. "Luna!" Cyrus shouted, fighting toward me through bodies. A horn blew from the outer wall. 3 short blasts. Border envoy signal. Holt swore. "Shadowfang riders at the gate." Of course. Lachlan had timed it perfectly. An officer forced his way through the crush with a sealed tube. "My king." Message arrow from South Tower. Landed inside the ward. Cyrus ripped it open. I saw his face change as he read. Rage first, then something colder. He handed it to me. "Sister cousin?" The note began in Lachlan's elegant script. "Since Ironhold cannot keep children safe, I have relocated 6 to secure care. Bring yourself alone to the Eclipse Moot Moonstone before Apex, and they are returned unharmed. Bring armies, and I send pieces. Refuse, and I release evidence that your king's guard sold them." A second line, added like an afterthought. "Wear your wedding veil. Let the realm see what was rejected." My hand shook so hard the parchment rattled. "6," I whispered. "He has 6." Behind us, another scream tore through the courtyard. Not fear this time, grief. One of the mothers had recognized a shoe found near the drainage grate. Cyrus took a step toward me, eyes blazing. "You are not going to him alone." I looked from the burning oil to the crowd tearing itself apart to the note in my hand, stained with someone else's blood. "He already made it alone," I said. And for the first time since the cord snapped in the Great Hall, I understood with absolute clarity that if I didn't move first, everyone else would keep deciding what my body was worth. And for the first time since the cord snapped in the Great Hall, I understood with absolute clarity that if I didn't move first, everyone else would keep deciding what my body was worth. "I'm going," I said. Cyrus's stare could have split stone. "Luna." "He asked for me alone. Not your army. Not your council." I held up the note with Lachlan's ink still wet where my thumb had smeared it. "If I hide behind your shields, he starts cutting children to prove he can." Behind us, the courtyard roared, fire hissing on wet stone, wolves shoving, mothers sobbing names into smoke. Cyrus grabbed my shoulders, not rough, but hard enough that I felt the tremor in him. "He wants you on ritual ground under Eclipse law. That's a kill floor." "I know." My voice shook once, then steadied. "I also know he can't complete a blood binding without my blood and witness consensus." His expression sharpened. "How do you know that?" "Because he made me memorize rites when I was 14 and called it heritage training." Bitter laugh. "He taught me the rules of my own slaughter." Captain Holt pushed through with soot on his brow and blood on his sleeve. "My king. Flames contained. Gates sealed. Shadowfang envoy demanding entry under treaty clause." "Deny," Cyrus snapped. "Do not deny," I said at the same time. Both males looked at me. "If you deny, Lachlan gets proof for his story. Tyrant king, hidden Omega, missing children." I shoved the note at Holt. "Admit them as witnesses. Search every saddlebag. Strip every blade at the inner gate. Let everyone see you do it." Holt blinked. Then to Cyrus. "That is tactically sound." Cyrus swore under his breath, the sound of a man losing an argument to necessity. Inch and touched my brow to his. "But I go inch and touched my brow to his. But I go in alone." His breath hitched, wolf and king and male all fighting in his eyes. Then he nodded once, violent, unwilling trust. "Alone into the moot hall," he said, "not alone in this war." The Eclipse Moot convened in the old assembly, a circular stone hall older than every throne currently occupied. Moonlight spilled through the open oculus above, silvering the ancestral moonstone at the center dais. By custom, no drawn steel crossed that threshold before verdict. By custom, wolves lied with cleaner words. I wore the torn remains of my wedding veil pinned over plain black wool. The rip still split down the middle where it had caught on that nail the night I was dragged away. Let them look. Let them remember. Shadowfang banners hung to my left. Shadowfang banners hung to my left. Ironhold to my right. As if cloth could pretend this was balanced. Lachlan stood beside the moonstone in ceremonial gray, immaculate, hands folded as if in prayer. He smiled when he saw me. "Cousin," he said warmly, voice carrying, "thank you for coming to your senses." A low murmur moved through the crowd. I walked down the center aisle alone, every step audible. "Where are the children?" I asked. He clicked his tongue, pitying. "Always dramatic entrances. We'll discuss all concerns once your contamination is purified and your lineage burden transferred to safer stewardship." "Where are they?" "Safe," he said. "Safer than under a king who cages his own lower wards." Boos and shouts broke from different sides at once. Lachlan lifted both hands in peacemaker grace. "My lords, my ladies, please. We are here for order." He turned to the high table. "As acting Shadowfang Guardian, I petition immediate emergency right under Eclipse Witness. Subject, Luna Shadowfang. Purpose, stabilization and public assurance. Subject, stabilization." I looked toward the elder bench. Elder Maeve sat there, spine bowed, hands clenched around her staff so hard her knuckles had gone white. She would not meet my eyes. Cyrus stood at the far perimeter and wore black, exactly outside ritual line, jaw locked so hard I could see the muscle jump from across the hall. He had obeyed me and stayed back. It looked like restraint. It smelled like murder held on a leash. Lachlan's attendants rolled in a low iron frame draped with white cloth and silver chains. A right bed. My skin went cold. "Proceed," called Magistrate Var from the legal dais, too eager. Lachlan stepped toward me with a ceremonial blade and a smile. "Come, Luna, don't make them force your wrists." That was his mistake, not the blade, not the confidence. He thought shame would keep me small. I moved before anyone understood. 2 strides to the moonstone. Knife from my boot. Small, legal length, hidden because nobody searches a disgraced Omega for offense. I slashed my palm in one clean line and slammed it against the ancestral stone. Blood spread black-red over old silver veins. For one suspended heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the hall howled, not with mouths, with stone. Silver gold light erupted from beneath my hand, racing in runic lines through the moonstone's carved channels and up my arm like fire that did not burn flesh. The marks under my ribs blazed in answer. Wolves cried out and staggered as pressure dropped over the chamber like a mountain settling on their shoulders. The scent of moon ozone and wild rain flooded the air. Lachlan's smile cracked. "Impossible," he whispered. I turned, blood dripping from my fingers onto ancient rock. My voice came out layered. Mine, and something older riding under it. Crown Howl answers me. No one shouted now, no one moved. I pointed at Lachlan with my bleeding hand. "Lachlan Wildfire, I name you Oathbreaker before Moon Witness, Pack Witness, and Blood Witness." His face twisted. "You have no standing." "I invoke Omega right of Trial Bite." That landed like thunder. Half the hall gasped. A lord in blue laughed in disbelief until his mate elbowed him hard enough to silence. Magistrate Var shot to his feet. "That right is archaic." "Still written," Cyrus said from the perimeter, voice like iron. "Unless this court admits it selectively ignores law." Var sat down. I kept my eyes on Lachlan. "You forged contamination records. You trafficked children. You sought illicit extraction of Crown Howl through kinbinder right. Deny it under bite law, or accept condemnation." Lachlan recovered fast. He always had. He spread his hands to the crowd, wounded dignity perfected. "You see? Instability mania, delusions of ancient voices, violent blood display. This is exactly why guardianship exists. He leaned closer, voice dropping so only I could hear. Yield, and I might let one child go first. My wolf hit my ribs so hard I tasted copper. Trial, I said. He smiled, and this time it showed teeth. Accepted. Chaos broke anyway. Lords shouting procedure, guards shifting, one of Lachlan's men reaching for a hidden bow at the side arch. Archers! Holt roared. Too late. 3 arrows loose toward the dais. I dropped. The first hissed over my shoulder. The second shattered against Moonstone. The third would have taken my throat if Cyrus hadn't moved. He crossed the ritual line in a blur of black leather and fury, caught the shaft in his forearm, snapped it, and used the broken half to pin the shooter's hand to the wooden pillar behind him. The hall exploded into snarls. "Stand down!" Cyrus thundered. "Trial bite holds. Any interference dies as oath treason." It should have ended right there. Lachlan lunged while everyone looked at Cyrus. His fist connected with my split palm and sent white pain to my elbow. He grabbed my wrist, trying to smear my blood onto his own ritual cuff. Extraction begins with contact. I drove my forehead into his nose. Cartilage crunched. He reeled, cursing. "Circle!" Var shrieked, suddenly invested in order now that blood was literal. "Clear the circle!" Stones scraped as bodies stumbled back. A ring opened around us, moonlight silvering blood on my hand. I was in peril. Yes. I was also done running. Lachlan wiped blood from his nose and laughed, feral and delighted. "There she is. I wondered when you'd stop pretending to be tame." He began to shift, bones cracking, shoulders broadening, eyes going wolf gold. Gasps rippled through the hall as fur raced over skin. Trial bite allowed shift. I did not. I stood human, bleeding, with my veil torn down the center and my chin up. "Look at him," I called to the assembly before he fully dropped to 4 paws. "Look at the male who called me unstable while he hid children in cages." "Liar," he snarled, voice half muzzle now. "Then deny the ledger." I pitched my voice to Carrie. Deny the entry naming me latent carrier at 14. Deny the kinbinder schedule for Eclipse Apex. Deny the coin transfers to false witnesses. His wolf lips peeled back. "You were never meant to read that." There it was. Confession. Plain as bite marks. I turned to the benches. "Elder Maeve, look at me." Slowly, shaking, she raised her face. "Did you seal my contamination report?" Tears tracked through the powder on her cheeks. "No," she whispered. Louder. "No." Her staff struck stone once, then again. I refused. They took my seal press. They said if I spoke, they'd expose my grandson for smuggling and hang him. A roar broke from Shadowfang delegates. Shock, outrage, some genuine, some performative. "Good. Let it burn in daylight," Lachlan charged. He came as a gray-black blur, heavier than I remembered, claws scraping sparks from stone. I pivoted and he clipped my hip, pain flaring hot down my leg. The crowd shouted as I hit one knee. He wheeled for my throat. I inhaled deep and did the one thing every noble said Omegas were too weak to weaponize. I let my scent resonance rip, not panic sour, not collapse, command. Heat and moon and blood salt surged off my skin in a concentrated wave, tuned through the bond and the crown howl hum still ringing in stone. Wolves at the edge of the circle staggered, eyes dilating. Lachlan's wolf faltered mid-stride, hackles jerking unevenly as conflicting instincts slammed him. Attack, submit, recoil. His left forepaw stuttered. His heartbeat jumped hard, exposed in his throat. "Now!" I shouted. Cyrus moved like a thrown spear. He hit Lachlan from the blind side, shoulder driving into ribs, momentum carrying both males across the circle. They crashed into a pillar. Stone cracked. Lachlan snapped for Cyrus's neck. Cyrus jammed his forearm across the jawline and slammed him down, knee-pinning spine, hand fisted in scruff. "Yield," Cyrus growled. Lachlan writhed, half shifted back to human so he could spit words. "Kill me, coward. Prove her pet king can only rule by slaughter." Cyrus's fingers tightened. He could have broken Lachlan's neck in one twist. He didn't. He looked at me. My choice. I pushed to my feet, limped forward, and ignored the blood running down my palm as I knelt beside the pinned male. Lachlan's eyes were wild, hate bright and familiar. "You were nothing without family," he hissed. I placed my bleeding hand on his forehead, fingers spread from brow to temple. Crown Howl answered with a pulse that shook my bones. "Family does not sell daughters at the altar," I said. The runes under my ribs lit so bright the hall glowed silver gold. "By blood witness and moon witness, I issue Crown Howl verdict. Lachlan Wildfire is stripped of rank, land right, succession claim, and pack protection. His name is severed from Shadowfang rolls. His oath marks are void. His exile is immediate and irreversible." Each clause hit like a hammer. On the final word, a sigil branded briefly above his brow, gold crescent split by a black line, then vanished. Lachlan screamed, raw and shocked. The scent of him changed instantly. No Alpha Command edge, no pack-recognized authority, just male, furious, and suddenly very mortal. Var stood shaking. "Recorded," he croaked. Cyrus hauled Lachlan up by the arm and shoved him toward Holt. "Irons!" Holt clapped null silver cuffs on him so hard Lachlan's wrists bled. "With pleasure." "Wait!" I shouted. Every head turned. "Bring them in." Holt's expression shifted, grim to something almost gentle. He signaled to the side arch. 2 guards let out 6 children wrapped in borrowed cloaks. Dirty, hollow-eyed, alive. Neri was third in line, chin scraped, braids half torn out. She saw me and broke from the guard at a run. "Luna!" I dropped to my knees in the middle of blood-stained stone and caught her hard enough to bruise. She smelled like fear and straw and stubbornness. I buried my face in her hair and shook once before I could stop it. Behind her, the other children found their families in a storm of sobs, laughter, and hands checking limbs, faces, breaths. Holt handed a packet of parchments to Magistrate Var. Recovered from Wildfire's South Cellar and Courier chests, original forgeries, bribe ledgers, and abduction routes. "Read them," I said. Var swallowed. "Here. Here." So he read. Out loud. Every false seal order. Every payment. Every note tying Darian Blackmore to staged rejection language. At that name, Darian, white-faced in the 3rd row, tried to slip toward an exit. Cyrus's guard blocked him with one flat palm. When the reading ended, the hall was silent except for children hiccuping into their mothers' cloaks. I stood, blood drying on my hand, veil torn, body aching. "March him," I said. Holt nodded. Lachlan fought until the first stare, then stumbled as the cuffs bit deeper. Wolves lined both sides of the passage as he was dragged through the same lower gate where I had arrived barefoot and hunted. No one looked away from him this time. Night came quiet after that, as if the keep itself had exhaled. I found the moon shrine by instinct, limping, exhausted, still in blood-stained black wool. Someone had cleaned the cut on my palm and wrapped it. Someone else had tried to remove the soot from my veil and failed. Cyrus was already there, seated on the stone ledge, forearms on his knees, staring at the votive flames like he didn't trust them to stay lit. He looked up when I entered. Relief hit the bond first, then hunger, then a reverence that made my throat ache. "You should be in the healer ward," he said. "So should you." I nodded at the fresh bandage around his forearm where the arrow had bitten deep. He flexed his hand once. Still attached. We stood facing each other in the moonlight, close enough to touch, neither moving first. Finally he spoke, voice low and rough. Luna Shadowfang, moon-witnessed carrier of Crown Howl, my chosen mate. He swallowed, and for maybe the first time since I met him, looked uncertain. May I ask for the right to mark you? No command, no entitlement. Ask. My pulse kicked. Fear rose with desire, old ghosts and new want colliding. I let both exist, then stepped closer until my breath touched his mouth. Yes, I said, steady. You may. His eyes went molten gold. Tell me if you want me to stop. I will. He lifted one hand slowly to my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone, giving me time to flinch if I needed. I didn't. I leaned into his palm. Mine, he whispered, like awe hurt. Yours, I answered, surprising myself with how right it felt. He bent and pressed his mouth first to the side of my neck, just below the ear, warm and careful. Not yet teeth. A kiss. Another. My knees softened. The bond hummed hot and bright between us, anticipation tightening every nerve. When his teeth finally grazed the junction of neck and shoulder, my breath caught. Now, he murmured against my skin. Now. The bite landed deep enough to seal. Pain flashed sharp, white, immediate, primal, then broke open into a wave of heat so intense it stole sound from the world. My claws punched halfway out. I grabbed his shoulders to stay upright, and he held me, one arm around my waist, the other braced at my back, as if I were both breakable and fierce. The mark burned, then pulsed. Through the bond, sensation flooded both directions. His fierce protectiveness, his hunger, his years of restraint cracking into devotion, my relief, my want, the wild joy of being chosen without being caged. Threads snapped into place one by one until there was no gap left to fall through. He made a wrecked sound against my throat. Mate. Mate, I echoed, dizzy with him. He licked the bite gently, soothing. Pain softened to a deep, throbbing warmth that spread down my spine and pooled low in my belly, not frantic like forced heat, but full and grounded and mine. When he pulled back, his pupils were blown wide. Luna, he said hoarsely, if you don't want to. I cut him off by fisting his shirt and turning him. He let me, immediate and absolute trust, bearing the line where shoulder met throat with his pulse jumping hard beneath scarred skin. Your turn, I whispered. His knees nearly gave at the words alone. I kissed the scar at his collarbone first, then the hollow above it, tasting salt and smoke, and the male who had knelt instead of taken. He trembled under my mouth. Mine, I said against his skin. A shudder ran through him. Yours, I bit. His body arched with a strangled groan, hands clutching my hips hard enough to bruise, not to stop me, to hold on. The skin gave under my teeth. Blood and bond and moonlight crashed together in a surge so powerful, my vision went silver at the edges. Completion. It felt like two rivers breaching a dam and becoming one current, no loss of self, only alignment. I could feel his heartbeat inside my own chest and mine answering in his. The cool pull at my throat settled into a steady ring of warmth. He was looking at me like the sky had. He was looking at me like the sky had cracked and shown him something holy. No more hiding from fate, I whispered, forehead to his. He wrapped both arms around me and pressed his face into my hair. Only facing it with you. We stood there a long time, marked and shaking and laughing a little in disbelief, his cloak around both our shoulders. Each time one of us whispered mine, yours, mate. The bond answered like a bell. When we finally sat on the shrine floor, I curled into his lap, and he held me through the aftershocks, little pulses of warmth from neck to spine, the strange calm of instincts finally at rest. Outside, dawn began to pale the mountain. Inside, for the first time in a long time, I slept without bracing for a locked door. The formal reinstatement happened in daylight, in the same great hall where rejection had once been theater. This time I walked in on my own feet with bite marks visible at my throat and his at his shoulder, uncovered by design. Cyrus stood beside the throne dais in full regalia, not seated above everyone, but at floor level beside the legal stone. I took my place opposite him. Between us sat a fresh charter in black ink. Magistrate Var cleared his throat, voice still shaky when reading my titles. Luna Shadowfang, restored in full rank and rights, recognized true mate to Cyrus Ironhold, invested this day as Moonvoice Regent with ruling vote beside the Alpha throne. A murmur rolled through the hall. Shock, approval, outrage, history shifting. Step forward, Var said. I did. He offered me the Regent torque, silver worked with moon thread. I fastened it myself and faced the assembly. Before witness, Cyrus said, voice carrying to the rafters, we dissolve the custom of wedding night rejection without tribunal. Effective now, no mating claim may be severed publicly without formal evidence review, advocate representation for both parties, and consent protections enforceable by challenge law. He nodded to me. My palms were steady when I spoke. Addendum. Any wolf, omega, beta, or alpha, may invoke immediate trial bite against fabricated contamination claims. False medical records become treason-class offense. Coercive bonding rights remain banned under penalty of exile and asset forfeiture. Recorded, Var said quickly, writing hard enough to tear parchment. Elder Maeve rose from the Shadowfang bench, leaning on her staff. She crossed to me slowly and bowed her head. I failed you, she said, voice carrying farther than she probably intended. I will testify to every seal they stole, every threat they made. If you allow it, I'd like to serve in the new review tribunal. I looked at her lined face, at regret etched deep and real. Serve, I said, and do better. She nodded once, eyes wet. Darian Blackmore was brought in under guard in plain gray, no house colors. He avoided my gaze entirely as charges of conspiracy and falsification were read. He asked for leniency. The hall gave him none. Rhett Vale knelt at the edge of the chamber when called to answer for quarter harassment. This time his apology was not to me alone, but entered into public censure. He didn't meet my eyes either. Good. After signatures, Cyrus and I went straight from Lawstone to the lower wards. Not the old cells, the rebuilt ones. Sunshafts had been cut into the ceilings. Doors opened from the inside. A legal office stood where the punishment alcove used to be, its shelves stacked with plain language rights scrolls. Next to it, a classroom with slate boards and too many chalk drawings of wolves with giant paws. Neri sat in the front row, tongue out in concentration as she wrote her name. She looked up, spotted us, and grinned with a gap where one tooth was missing. Lady Luna, King Cyrus, look, I can spell advocate now. Better than half the council, Cyrus said solemnly. She cackled. Captain Holt leaned in the doorway, arms folded, looking less like a weapon and more like a wall built in the right place. Perimeter reports clean, he told Cyrus. Then, to me, with a small nod, families asked me to say thank you. Tell them to bring complaints directly, I said. No petitions lost in upper desks. He grinned. Already told them. They seem excited to terrify administrators. Good. Cyrus's hand found mine, fingers threading without ceremony, mate mark warm at my throat, his answering under my lips where his collar shifted. At the ward courtyard, workers were planting young pine along the path where refuse carts used to pass. The next decade being argued with. Only the next decade being argued with? Only a decade? I squeezed his hand. Optimist. He laughed, low and real. When the bells rang noon, he bent and kissed me in full sunlight, not to display ownership, but partnership. Around us, no one gasped. They just kept building, teaching, arguing, living. War-scarred Alpha, once cast out Omega, king and moon voice regent, mate-marked and stubborn. No betrayer left to unmake us. No locked door left between us and the future.